Hello everyone and welcome to Orbital, the Gadgets 360 podcast. In today's episode, we are going to be talking about the best TVs that you can buy under 25,000 rupees in India. A lot of developments keep happening in this space, and once every few months, I'll have to just call our in-house audio and TV expert here on the podcast to talk about the latest developments in this space. And of course, this expert is Ali Pardiwala, who's here with us. Namaskar, Ali.
Namaskar, Pranay.
Yes, very good to have you here once again. I think you were here last week, even though we recorded that episode way too long ago.
Yes, but as far as the listeners are concerned, it was last week. So
yeah, exactly. And no one went on leave. No episodes were recorded in advance, and everything was just fine.
Exactly.
All right, so I'm your host Pranay Parab. So I think the reason we are recording this today is because Ali has just reviewed one TV under 25,000 rupees that could be a potentially big seller in India, considering that Xiaomi TVs are often at the top of the charts when you look at smart TV sales and other stuff. So he's reviewed the Mi TV 4A Horizon Edition, the 43-inch variant, which I think has an introductory price of just a shade under 24,000 rupees. So that is the reason we are here today. And there are also a few other TVs in the sub 25k segment. So there's a lot going on. This space keeps changing like every 2-3 months these days. It's almost like, the smartphone space and how it has been in the last few years. And that I'm really excited to see, because you get more in your TV, more features in your TV for a lower price. So Ali, how do you feel about this new TV and the fact that your beat has become much more hectic?
So yeah, the Mi TV 4A Horizon Edition is, in my opinion, a pretty good TV for the price. It's about 23,500 rupees. That's the cost of the TV. It's not wildly different. I mean, the name itself suggests it. It's a Mi TV 4A at the end of the day. But that Horizon Edition branding is essentially what gives it a bit of an edge. It looks better. It has narrower, I'm not going to call them bezels, but it has narrower borders surrounding the screen, which gives it a bit of that, that modern and the more premium look, even though this is at the end of the day an affordable TV. And apart from that, one big advantage of having these borders is that, having these slim borders, is that you can essentially possibly fit a larger screen TV in a smaller space, because you're not dealing with very thick borders. So if you're kind of cutting it really, really close, then something like the Mi TV 4A Horizon Edition will really help. In the sense, you'll get a 43-inch TV if you were earlier thinking maybe you'll get a 32 because of space issues and stuff like that. So there are a couple of these key advantages to the Mi TV 4A Horizon Edition, or at least a 43-inch variant that I reviewed. And this gives it a bit of an edge in this space simply because it's different. It's got a bit of a more premium approach to the design, and it's still got that reliable experience. It's running Android TV. It's got the patch wall user interface. All of that stuff is all in place. So in my opinion, this is a good TV that has made a positive impact on this segment.
Yeah, that's good to hear. I'm just really annoyed with these companies for not sending us the base variants, which are like under 15,000 rupees. I don't think we've got a single one of them, right, to review. Not from Xiaomi, not from Realme, not from OnePlus.
No, so there was one brand. I'm not going to name that brand because the review didn't actually pan out. But there was one brand that offered to send a 32-inch TV. But that was just about the only brand that was offering to send a 32-inch TV ever. Everybody else wants to always send the highest variant, because as one of our colleagues pointed out, that this is probably because they want to give you the best experience and then take your views and stuff like that and kind of give even the lower variants credit for that particular review. So say I review the 43-inch variant, they'll kind of try to pitch that in their social media and their marketing as being applicable to even the 32-inch variant, even though that's not really the case. So that seems to be one of the reasons why the brands want to always send us the best possible screen size for review. And this is a problem for me personally while reviewing, because I get people calling me and telling me, we'd like to send you this 85-inch TV for review. And I'm like, where the hell am I supposed to put it in my house? So I have these problems all the time where I'm trying to convince somebody to come down in screen size simply because I'm trying to find the most feasible option for myself. While the brands always want to send you the best possible thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, that 85-inch thing was like ridiculous. I mean, we stayed in Bombay, man. Nobody has a house big enough. Well, at least nobody in journalism has a house.
Exactly. Nobody in journalism has a house that big.
Yeah.
Or at that point, I'm going to have to, mount it on a different wall and change the entire layout of my house if I am to do anything with a TV of that size.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, 55 inches is just about as large as I can take, and that's usually where I draw the line.
Yeah, man, Ali, and also think about it, right? If you have an 85-inch TV, to watch that TV, you need about like 12 to 14 feet of distance between you and the TV, right? Where do you get that even if you find a wall in the house?
Pretty much. I think 14 to 15 feet is the ideal distance for an 85-inch TV.
Yeah.
And that is also the reason why I said, I mean, I'll have to change the entire layout of my house. I instead
break
of
some walls.
Break some walls, or put the TV in my dining room and move my sofas to the other end of the house or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
Whatever.
It's just crazy. I think these TVs should be banned from being reviewed in Bombay. Just send them to, I don't know, Delhi or some other place where people actually have houses.
Or find somebody who has a bungalow in Ambi Valley or something like that, and get them to do all the reviews. Or you know what? Just give me the bungalow in Ambi Valley, and I will happily review those 85-inch TVs.
Yeah, true that. Anyway, so coming back to the topic, I am definitely quite annoyed that we never get those 32-inch TVs to review, because a lot of people do ask us, like you said, that what about the Mi TV 4A Horizon Edition 32-inch TV? Should I buy that? And if you look at the review is always for the higher variant, right? The 43 one or the 55 one or whatever. So you can't really look at our review and say that no, this also applies to the 32-inch variant, like you rightly said.
So a few things might apply, but the core viewing experience, which is how the TV handles resolution, how the TV feels in terms of size, all of those things are obviously different, because the 43-inch Horizon Edition is a full HD TV, and the 32 inch is an HD, which is a 720p, 768p TV, essentially. So that there is definitely going to be a significant difference in the performance of that. The only things that will match are things like, the software and the way it looks and all of those kind of things. But those are all secondary in the larger scheme of things.
Yeah, and panel quality, right? Like, how do you know it's the same panel that's used in both the TVs without reviewing?
It's not going to be. Obviously, the resolution is different. It cannot be the same panel. It might be a similar panel, but the resolution is different at the end of the day. So you never know how it's going to pan out. That I reviewed the 43-inch, and the 43-inch was good, but I cannot say the same thing about the 32-inch unless I were to review that as well.
Yeah, true that. Completely understand that viewpoint. Now, I just have a couple of queries about this Mi TV 4A Horizon Edition. Now, number one is the performance okay, or is it way too sluggish as we've seen in many other TVs in this affordable segment? And number two is the remote okay? Do they have a dedicated mute button and everything else that you need?
I'll get to the second part first. That remote is still the same old remote. Nothing has really changed over there. So no mute button, no source selector button, no settings button. You have to go back to the Android TV home screen to be able to adjust the settings, which is really annoying, because sometimes I want to see changes in real time, right? But no, I can't do that. I'm going to be in content. I have to get out of it, change the settings, and then go back in to see if it's made a difference. But now I have no idea what it looked like before, so I don't know if it's made a difference. So that is essentially one big problem. The remote hasn't really changed. About the general performance, coming to specifically how the TV performs with picture, in terms of picture performance, it's pretty good for a 43-inch Full HD TV. It handles resolutions well. It handles upscaling well. So even if you're watching standard definition 480p content, it will still look pretty good on the 43-inch Full HD screen. In general, I only found the colors a little bit dull, but apart from that, I didn't really have any other problems. Going up to full HD content, this TV does a good job. And coming to the performance of the interface and stuff like that, it is a bit sluggish. Now, there's just 1 GB of RAM, 8 GB of internal storage. That 1 GB of RAM is the operative thing here. There's also an AMLogic processor, which is another operative point here. Now, this isn't a bad set of specifications. It's just a bit underwhelming, and the TV is sluggish at times. It's not unreliable, it's stable, but it's sluggish in the sense it can take up to 2 seconds for the remote to kind of for the TV to respond to commands from the remote. So in that sense, yes, the TV is just a little bit sluggish, just a little bit slow, but they have fixed one big point, and that is they have finally put in a quick boot mode, which is something that Sudeep had spoken to us on a previous episode of the podcast itself. He had said that these guys are working on something, on an implementation that will finally do away with that 45-second boot time, and this works. The TV boots up in like 4 to 5 seconds, provided you haven't fully powered it off. So in that sense, there is that one improvement where the TV no longer takes 45 seconds to boot in most cases.
Yeah, and
But
before
that
you
is
go
pretty
ahead, I'm just gonna like quickly give people a little bit of context. So Sudeep Sahu is a product manager at Xiaomi. We had him and Ishwar Neelakantan, who's I think the like head of TVs basically for Xiaomi in India. So these two people were on a previous episode of Orbital. You should definitely go and listen to that interview. And you know, like, we had complained about these exact things over there, and they had promised a fix for some of these things, and that's what Ali is talking about. So Ali, I think you can take it over from here.
Yeah, definitely. So that one fix that they had promised has actually come about, and this is a really useful fix because in a lot of so I'm going to tell you something from my personal experience. I have a 2-year-old daughter, and she basically, when she wakes up in the morning or when she wakes up in the evening after her nap, she immediately wants to watch cartoons, and 45-second boot time is painful if you're dealing with a cranky 2-year-old. At which point that 5 seconds to boot up and another 10 to 15 seconds for me to load up her cartoons on Netflix or YouTube or whatever makes all the difference in her crying or not crying. So for me, that 5-second boot time is a lifesaver, and it's not something that it's something that I really, really wanted for Xiaomi to do, and they finally done it with the Mi TV 4A Horizon Edition.
Yeah, I know. I hope finally they get the mute button and source select button in the Mi TV 4A Horizon Edition 2021.
Maybe we need to get Sudeep and Ishwar back on the podcast and complain some more, and then hopefully the next TVs will have it.
Yeah, and maybe like the remote will be available separately so that you can fix your old Mi TVs, whichever you bought, in case you wanted that functionality. So
Definitely.
that's another thing we are looking forward to. Anyway, so I think the Mi TV 4A Horizon Edition is a decent TV that has been established. Now, we should also clarify that the actual price of this TV is likely to be above 25,000. 26,000 rupees or so, according to the Xiaomi website. I think this is just an introductory offer, right? Them selling it at under 24,000.
But
right now.
I don't think the price will increase significantly. Yes, it is an introductory offer, but it might increase by 500 to 1,000 rupees. It's 23,500 right now. Maybe it will get to about 24,000 pushing it. It's still cheaper than the Mi TV 4X, which is the next TV in their lineup, which is about 26,000 rupees right now.
Okay. I also have a slightly like beginner level question. Like, you can get a smartphone with 8 GB RAM for like 20,000 rupees, but why can't you get a TV with like this much RAM at this price range? Usually I've seen like 1 GB RAM or thereabouts.
So for one thing, TVs don't really need that much RAM. Smart TVs don't really need that much RAM. 2 GB of RAM is enough in most cases. I don't think Android TV is that efficient a system, and you're not really running too much. You don't have the TV trying to catch a mobile network and trying to latch onto 4G or whatever those kind of bands. And there's a lot less that the TV does. All it needs to do is connect to the Wi-Fi. It doesn't really need to load up too much app data. Everything is kind of in real time. It's loading it and it's immediately pushing it forward. So in that sense, the TVs don't really need that much RAM. That said, again, yes, like you said, a smartphone can have 8 GB of RAM for 20,000 rupees. So why can't a TV even have 2 GB? Why does this TV have to have 1 GB? Because there are a bunch of other costs and stuff going into this. I mean, the screen itself is the big cost on the TV, the panel itself. This is a much your phone has a 5.56 inch screen at the very most. These panels cost a lot more to manufacture because they're 43 inches across and stuff like that. So that is the big component.
And let's not forget logistics now. I mean, you can maybe ship like 100 TVs in a truck at most, whereas you'll be able to ship probably like 500 phones in the same space.
That's true. So the big chunk of the cost is, of course, the logistics and the transportation cost of getting it to all of those showrooms or getting it to all of the Amazon warehouses and then being able to ship it out to various parts of the country. So yeah, the cost factor of a TV is never really going to match up with the cost factor of a smartphone, in which case they do need to cut costs by putting 1 GB of RAM instead of 2 GB. Even whatever the minuscule amount of money, maybe 300 or 400 rupees, that makes a big difference in the bottom line and in their margins.
So yeah, that's actually like a pretty good explanation of what's going on in this field. Now the next thing to think about is what other TVs are there which are good under 25,000 rupees. What should people expect, and which one would you buy?
So of the TVs I've reviewed specifically, I would say the next best option is the Realme Smart TV, which is about 23,000 rupees, I believe. This is also available in 32-inch and 43-inch sizes. It also runs Android TV. It has a MediaTek processor, unlike the Amlogic processor on the Mi TV 4a Horizon Edition. So it does have a few improvements, but in my opinion, the panel and the display on the Mi TV 4a Horizon Edition is a little bit better than the Realme TVs, which is why I prefer it now, even though they're roughly the same price and they have similar specifications. The Realme is in my opinion the second best option in this field. And if we talk about a third option, but I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty of how this is because I haven't reviewed it, but the OnePlus TV Y series, the 43-inch Y series TV does look like a pretty good option as well. Now I haven't reviewed this, so I have no idea how the display and how the performance is, but in terms of specifications, in terms of software, all of that stuff, this looks like a pretty good option as well. If you have the ability to head over to a OnePlus store near you and check it out, you definitely should, and take a look and see whether that one will work out for you better than the Mi TV 4a 43 Horizon Edition. But if not, and you're kind of going, but as a long-term proposition, if you think that, maybe 2 or 3 years down the line, I'm going to get a better internet connection or I'm going to upgrade to that 800 rupee Netflix plan, then pick up the Mi TV 4X 43. It's 26,000 rupees. It just costs a little bit more.
Yeah, true that. So that's what I mean. Under 25k, still like there are some like great options, no doubt. But I think now the case can easily be made. Like if you just extend your budget just a little bit, you will get so much more. So that's probably one route to take. Now the last thing I want to check before we close this episode is how's the sound quality on this Mi TV Horizon Edition, and any other options under 25k that give you front firing speakers for better audio experiences.
So the sound on this it's good. I'm not going to say it's terrible. The volume levels are pretty stable in the sense it doesn't suddenly spike in those loud scenes and stuff like that, and you'll be able to hear. But at the end of the day, no TV's bottom firing speakers are good enough, and if you can afford a soundbar, you should definitely be getting yourself a soundbar for that better sound. But if you aren't interested in picking up additional equipment, the Mi TV 4a 43 Horizon Edition has perfectly acceptable sound. It'll work for you. It's good enough for the screen size. It's adequate. There's 20 watts of output, which is just about fine. Are there better options in the category? There is one that I can think of. This is the View Cinema TV, which recently came out in 32-inch and 43-inch variants. Now, I'm not too sure about availability because View's availability has been very, very weird these last few months. sometimes it's available and then suddenly it's out of stock for 2 months, and then all of a sudden you see it available again for like 1 day. So I'm not too sure about the availability, but the View Cinema TV 43, which is the full HD version and costs around the same as the Mi TV 4A 43 Horizon Edition, that has a front-firing soundbar type speaker. So the sound quality is going to be a little bit better on that. But again, I haven't reviewed the 43-inch full HD variant. What I have reviewed is the 50 or the 55-inch variant, and that is a completely different experience. So I cannot say the same thing for the 43-inch full HD variant.
Yeah, true that. So much of this is like an asterisk, right? You can't just say that, okay, no, I did X, I reviewed X TV, so it should apply to all models of the X TV. That's like the most frustrating thing in this whole experience, I suppose. Yeah. But anyway, good you pointed out that front-firing speaker thing. I think that's a pretty important one for a lot of people. But in case you already have purchased a TV and you're thinking, oh no, I should have thought about this, then maybe you can get a like simple, affordable soundbar instead of just upgrading your TV or something. I think for 5,000 rupees, you get that Xiaomi soundbar, which is decent enough to improve the volume just a bit. And at slightly more than that, during sales, especially, I've seen good soundbars at under like 10,000, right? So 7,000-8,000 should be good enough to get one of those slightly older models at a discount for a soundbar.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you can get a basic soundbar for about 8,000 to 9,000 rupees right now. There are a lot of these Blowpunk and a couple of these other brands that are selling them for very low right now. And if you buy, a 2 or 3 year old variant from a brand like Poke Audio or even JBL, you could get it for maybe just about 10,000, maybe a little bit more. In which case it might just be worth it, because that soundbar is a pretty good investment in my opinion. It's not only a part of your TV, you can also use it as your audio system for your living room or whatever. So in that sense, yeah, if you can get a soundbar, I will always say get a soundbar. But if you don't really have the budget, don't worry too much about the sound. It's adequate.
Yeah, true that. Okay, so I think we have covered the most important points for most people. Is there anything we missed by any chance, Ali? Anything else you can think of? If not, then I'll just,
I think we've covered everything.
All right, then. So we'll wrap up this episode of Orbital right away, and we'll be back with one more episode next week. In the meantime, you can send us your questions, comments, and feedback at podcast@gadgets360.com. And you can also reach out to us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram at Gadgets360. And definitely go to the website gadgets360.com and also gadgets.ndtv.com/guide, because that's where we have a bunch of buying guides also for TVs and audio products. And Ali has done a lot of impressive explanations work as well over there. Definitely check all of those things out. And the Mi TV 4A Horizon Edition, I keep forgetting the name sometimes because it's too long. That is the review for that product is available on the website. You can definitely check that out. Thank you so much for listening. And as I said before, we'll be back next week.
My employees just got iPhone 12 on Verizon 5G. The 5G business has been waiting for. We download huge files on the go and use multicam video conferencing. Plus, with the coverage of 5G nationwide and in more cities, ultra-wideband, it's 5G from the network businesses rely on.
Get iPhone 12 Pro Max for your business with our best offer yet. 5G nationwide. Available in over 1,800 cities. Terms apply. Limited time offer.
This is your tech news briefing for Wednesday, December 16th. I'm Amanda Lewellyn for the Wall Street Journal. Yesterday, the European Union proposed 2 new bills that would give regulators there more power to oversee tech companies and the authority to fine them for anti-competitive behavior, among other perceived violations. The proposals don't name names, but they could have some pretty big implications for the U.S. tech giants. Our tech reporter Sam Schechner will tell us all about them after these headlines. Heading into the U.S. elections in November, Facebook, along with other digital platforms, said it would block ads about social issues, elections, and politics as part of an effort to curb misinformation. Now, Facebook says it's allowing political ads for Georgia's upcoming Senate runoff elections. The decision, which follows a similar move by Google, comes after feedback from experts and advertisers that the platforms are critical for reaching voters, especially during the pandemic. Facebook says it'll continue to prohibit ads that contain false claims or which delegitimize the runoffs. A spokeswoman says the company will announce when the broader political ad blackout is lifted. We've been talking about the suspected Russian hack of U.S. federal agencies and businesses. Thousands of customers of the Texas-based software provider SolarWinds may have been exposed via a backdoor installed in a software update. We talked about this on the show yesterday, and there are signs that the Trump administration is growing more alarmed about the hack. Yesterday, the White House National Security Advisor cut short a European trip to address the issue. Our reporter David Uberti says, as we learn more about this attack, it's highlighting how global supply chains make it much harder for companies to protect themselves.
Well, if you think about whatever company it is that you work for, think of all of the companies that send you equipment. Think of all of the software providers that you use to log onto your computer systems, all of the independent contractors that work for your company. Depending on the size of your organization, that could be hundreds, if not thousands, of different entities. So what that does to, use cybersecurity parlance is expand the attack surface. Attackers could essentially go into each one of those specific companies or organizations as a way into your organization, depending on what sort of data access they have. So it really sort of is emblematic of how these sprawling supply chains that oftentimes stretch around the globe can really provide a lot of security issues for companies.
Texas Attorney General says he's hiring 2 prominent law firms to handle a possible antitrust case against Google, to signal that a lawsuit could be filed soon. People familiar with the matter say Texas has been leading a coalition of attorneys general who have been zeroing in on Google's dominant presence in the digital advertising market. The states have been coordinating closely with the Justice Department, which filed its own antitrust lawsuit against Google in October. Google has denied any anti-competitive behavior, saying it operates in highly competitive markets and that its services benefit consumers and businesses. And Ireland's Data Protection Commission is fining Twitter the equivalent of about $546,000 for failing to properly and promptly notify regulators of a data breach disclosed in January 2019. Twitter's chief privacy officer says the delay was the result of staffing over that holiday season. He said Twitter takes full responsibility and that the company remains fully committed to protecting customers' data and privacy. Regardless, the action marks the first fine for a U.S. tech company under the European Union's new data privacy law. The case is being seen as a bellwether, since it's the first in a long list of privacy cases involving big tech companies in Ireland, where many tech giants have their regional headquarters. By the way, the tech companies are facing a potential slew of new regulations in Europe, covering far more than just privacy. We'll break down what's being proposed after the break.
My employees just got iPhone 12 on Verizon 5G. The 5G business has been waiting for. We download huge files on the go and use multicam video conferencing. Plus, with the coverage of 5G nationwide and in more cities ultra-wideband, it's 5G from the network businesses rely on.
Get iPhone 12 Pro Max for your business with our best offer yet. 5G nationwide. Available in over 1,800 cities. Terms apply. Limited time offer.
Much like in the US, officials in the European Union have been looking for ways to increase their oversight of big tech. Yesterday, the EU's executive arm, the European Commission, proposed 2 bills that would do just that. If they go forward, the proposals would give regulators there new powers to rein in tech companies and the authority to take big action to stop certain kinds of anti-competitive behavior. Our reporter Sam Schechner covers technology in Europe, and he joins me now to talk more about these proposals. Hey, Sam, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so broad strokes, what's in these proposals?
Well, we're talking about 2 different bills that the EU has been chewing on for a while. One of them called the Digital Services Act, and it regulates the way companies have to handle content that is distributed across the internet. Since the late 1990s, internet companies in Europe, as they have in the US, have enjoyed pretty broad shield against liability for content that users post on the internet. And that's been credited for creating a flowering of services that don't necessarily have to worry about being hauled into court for every last thing their users might post. But in recent years, there have been a lot of complaints that companies don't do enough to remove terrorist propaganda, to stop child pornography, and thornier and harder to define problems like misinformation and election interference. And so what we're seeing, and this is a conversation happening in the US, but we're seeing with this law is that the EU is going to take a graduated approach. As companies are bigger and more systemic and distribute content to more people, they're going to have greater responsibility to monitor problems that might be occurring on their services and take action against them. And if they don't, the EU can step in with fines of up to 6% of their yearly worldwide revenue. For some companies, that could be more than $10 billion.
So that's one proposal. What's the other one?
The other proposal tackles competition and the perceived idea that there's less of it in the digital age. Some big companies, we're talking about the Apples, the Googles, the Amazons, the Facebooks of the world, have gotten so big that they're actually the target of antitrust investigations in Europe and in the US, where charges have been brought recently against Google and Facebook. And there's been a long debate about whether the current antitrust rules are really fit for this digital age. And so the EU's answer is that there's a certain group of companies that they define as gatekeepers, and they actually came up with a numerical definition for this. But essentially, they mean companies that are the intermediaries between businesses and individuals across big swaths of Europe. They have set out a list of, basically a blacklist of things they can't do to crush competitors, and a white list of things they must do, like they must be interoperable. They must allow their users to port their data around, and they cannot, for instance, use their power to boost their own products over those of competitors.
And I understand that these proposals are progressing alongside similar legislation in the United Kingdom, which is, of course, no longer a part of the European Union. What are they working on?
Yes, indeed. Yesterday, the UK announced that it is moving forward with what it calls an online harms law, which is very similar in its, at least, idea to the Digital Services Act. It will focus specifically on social an online harms law, which is very similar in its, at least, idea to the Digital Services Act. It will focus specifically on social media, on search engines, and looking at how they are handling the content and making sure that they're mitigating the kinds of harms that could occur from the services and content that they spread. And it will be backed with potentially even heftier fines than the Digital Services Act, up to 10% of worldwide revenue for companies that, systemically don't follow the rules. That law is progressing and is supposed to be introduced next year in the UK.
So if these actions across Europe do go forward, what could the consequences be for big tech companies, particularly American companies like Facebook, Google, and the rest?
Well, together, both the UK and the EU, and both of them working on these themes of content and moderation, and at the same time competition, that amounts to the biggest potential expansion of global tech regulation in years, and it's not just actually in the EU and UK. The US has been talking about updates to Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, which is somewhat similar to those liability protections that are being updated in Europe, and are, as well with the Online Harms Act in the UK. And so what we're seeing is maybe a change in how big tech companies are going to have to behave in the future. Now, there's a lot of debate and horse trading and lobbying that's going to occur before any of these things become law. But it seems likely that governments are going to force these big companies to offer certain kind of minimum guarantees. Governments would like to say that these ones are kind of like what you would expect in the offline world, that, if you buy something, that it's going to be relatively safe, and, they're going to be almost like nutrition labels for how the algorithms are showing you what this content and not that content. Why am I being recommended this video? Those are the kinds of obligations that are going to be increasingly applied to tech companies if these laws go through. And that could end up costing them a lot of money. And if you listen to what the tech companies' lobbyists say, it could end up squelching some innovation because it creates too much cost and paradoxically could end up protecting the big companies from upstarts who might not want to or be able to follow these rules.
And how are the companies responding to these proposals?
It's a mixed bag from the tech companies. Facebook actually came out and said that they think that these proposals go in the right direction. You get a more measured reaction from Google, for instance, which said that, it feels like these proposals are targeting a specific handful of companies and could have nefarious effect on innovation. But in general, I think the companies are not coming out with guns blazing because they know there's a lot of lobbying left to be done. In general, they have been urging the EU to come up with laws that don't specifically focus only on big tech companies and rules that don't force them to be overzealous in removing content that might be legal if somewhat troubling. And to be fair to the EU, they've been pretty open about those dangers and have included provisions in these laws to protect free speech, requiring ways for people to appeal when their content is being removed. Remains to be seen how the text of the law will finally come out.
And of course, this could affect more than just big tech. What has the broader response been?
On one hand, you have groups like Mozilla, the nonprofit behind Firefox, saying that some of this new regulation is long overdue. For instance, that we need more transparency about online advertising, which is something that's in the EU's DSA, and that there's been potentially irreparable harm to certain markets, and you have consumer groups saying, no, we need stronger protections for e-commerce to make sure that you're not buying counterfeit goods. But by the same token, there are also, NGOs that say, for instance, that this kind of rulemaking threatens to further balkanize the internet by creating different sets of rules that apply in different places, whether you're in Europe, whether you're in India, whether you're in China, whether you're in the US, and that in the long run can diminish what the internet really represents and the globalizing influence that it's had. One person told me the internet's not going to die of one cut. It's going to die of 1,000 cuts.
Now that is a quote. All right, our reporter Sam Schechner, thank you so much for joining me.
A pleasure to be here.
That's it for today's Tech News Briefing. You can find more tech stories on our website, WSJ.com. And if you like our show, please do rate and review us in your app store. It really does help. I'm Amanda Lewellyn for the Wall Street Journal. Thanks for listening.